You're listening to the Good Question Podcast with Richard Jacobs. Our goal is to make each of our guests exclaim, that's a good question. I don't know the answer. Because when that happens, it means you, the listener, may be inspired to learn more beyond the interview and to ask great questions yourself that lead to new insights. In this podcast, we cover historical and current anthropology, comparative religion, and history. Welcome, and let's get started.
Hello, this is Richard Jacobs with the Good Question Podcast. My guest today is Josh Dech. I thought his name might be Dech, and he said that might be a little bit flamboyant, and then I joked that it was flamboyant. But anyway, wanted to make sure the listeners got that horrible dad joke as we start. But Josh, he's a podcast host himself. It's called the ReversABLE Podcast, or the ReversABLE Podcast. We're going to talk about Crohn's disease and colitis. The topic will be the book, Crohn's and Colitis Decoded, Unraveling the Root Causes of IBD. So a very important topic that I'm sure is so painful and debilitating that listeners that have it, hopefully they'll get some insights that will provide them possible relief. So welcome. Thanks for coming, Josh.
Richard, it's a pleasure to be here. And I love that little intro. Delightful. Thank you so much. And just for you guys wondering, when Richard's talking about decoding, we really do want to break it down for you in every essence of the way here, because if I can just be so bold to lead with this, Richard, I think the entire narrative around bowel disease like Crohn's colitis is wrong. I think what your doctors are taught is wrong, and it is not an autoimmune, random, or genetic condition, and it's very fixable.
That's good to know. Okay. Usually the people I speak to, they've had personal experience with what they're passionate about. So, what's your history? Have you had it? Hopefully not. If so, hopefully you've gotten it to a point where it's not hurting you anymore. But what's your background?
Yeah, you're bang on. I was a paramedic. It was actually my first career, and I was dealing with bowel issues my entire life. My doctor called it IBS, and that was just the way it was. My dad had it. My mom had it. When I was probably 11, 12, my mom was rushed to the hospital for emergency surgery due to a perforated colon. She's had 2 feet of bowel removed over 2 or 3 different surgeries. She's had her gallbladder taken out, meshes put in. It's just been a nightmare. And when I was a paramedic, age 19, I moved all the way across Canada, and my guts got way worse. And my doctor told me it's IBS, take some Imodium. I started getting acne. They offered me Accutane. My ADHD was through the roof. They offered me Vyvanse, and every drug just made me worse until one day I hit rock bottom with blood in my bowels, mucus. I was 15 bowel movements a day sometimes with 10-minute transit times. So I had foods in the toilet. Woe is doesn't even cover. It was wild. It was like a slip and slide. There was no digestion going on, right? No absorption.
10 minutes and it was already coming back out. Oh.
10 minutes. It was unbelievable. I would chew and swallow a salad, and it was almost so undigested you could replate the bloody thing. So I dealt with that for a while. I lost 30, 40 pounds. And because your gut's so connected to your brain, I spiraled, where I was at a point, Richard, where my brain was so messed up because of my gut. That's all your brain chemicals, or they call them neurotransmitters, are all made down there, where I was having severe anxiety. As a paramedic, calm, cool, collected, to having panic attacks that there's dishes in the sink, to the point where depression got so bad I planned my own suicide thoroughly, several different times. 3 or 4 different times. So your gut and your brain are connected, and I've been there. I know what it's like, and I know what it's like to be down there. And I never got a diagnosis. I ended up getting some help externally, and I knew by then doctors would just give me more drugs. So I never went to them, never got a diagnosis, but I've been down that road. And now we're hundreds and hundreds of people with bowel disease who have their lives back. And so it can be done.
Yeah, that's crazy. What did you do to just start helping yourself? What were some of the first things you looked at, and what did you try?
Well, I was on some basic stuff. So at this stage in my life, I wasn't as dialed in with my diet. I was looking at macros. I was counting calories and counting protein, but I wasn't counting chemicals. So it wouldn't be uncommon for me to go to the grocery store and buy 4 boxes of breakfast cereal and bring those home and go, look, I'm going to have these for a snack because I meet my carb macros. And that just wasn't cutting it. So the first step for me was food. Now, a lot of people with bowel disease, especially over many, many years of issue, diet's not even a problem. They're eating so restricted already and still can't get better. But I have had people come to me asking for help who are binge drinking on the weekends, eating Chick-fil-A. You'll never get better like that. Regardless, Richard, you'll love this. Doctors will tell their patients, eat whatever you want. Food has no bearing on your bowel disease.
Oh, it's the only thing that keeps you alive for as long as you live. Food and air, waters. There's probably no correlation.
Not at all. Who cares? Who needs it? So It's been a wild ride, but for me, the first thing was food. But at this stage in my life, my guts were full of candida, fungal overgrowth. I had mold exposure. I had parasitic infections. I had latent viral infections that were gone. But as my immune system weakened, they came back up. So I had this onslaught of things that was just eroding my body from the inside out. My doctor said, yep, here's some Imodium to stop the diarrhea. But when I broke it down, I said, if I have diarrhea, my body's trying to get rid of something. Like inflammation's a defensive response. If I'm dumping water into my bowels, what's my body trying to get rid of? And if that's what's happening, why would I want to stop the diarrhea? Because the Imodium is causing me to retain, therefore reabsorb the things my body's trying to get rid of, right? So even the protocols they gave me didn't make sense. And so we had to go back to the beginning and figure out what started this whole cascade and understand my own history, the story that got me here to where I was at the time. And then we could reverse the process.
Okay, so what did you do? You knew about the condition of your bowel, everything with the candida. Was diet your first change, or like what are some of the things you did?
Diet was huge. Diet was one of the biggest things that I was able to do for myself. I took out basic gluten, grains, dairy, sugars, anything refined, anything processed from a box. And for some people, this can be hard, because we're so accustomed to eating food that comes from a box that we almost don't know what real food is anymore. And I've been eating so clean for so long. Honestly, the thought of eating Pop-Tarts and Dunkaroos like I used to just makes my stomach turn. Like, I recognize that it's not food now, because I often describe us like human beings. If you were to take an animal in captivity and you feed it food directly from your hand, you bring it steaks, you bring it whatever, and you put it into the wild, it doesn't know how to hunt anymore. It doesn't know that that steak came from that animal. I got to go kill it myself. And as human beings, we shop so much at a grocery store. We shop so much around boxed food and packaged foods and processed foods that when it comes down to just eating vegetables and meat and eggs and basic stuff, we almost don't know what it is. We're like, I don't really like that. I'd rather taste this thing because it tastes better. But we don't realize that the foods have been chemically engineered to taste good. Right? It's a very wild process. So that was my first stop, was changing the way I was eating and the inputs that were causing me toxicity and contributing to bacterial overgrowth. But second to that, I had to open up what's called drainage pathways. So we often think about detoxing. Have you ever done a detox, Richard?
No, but I know there's liver detox, things like that. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Like a juice cleanser, a liver detox, right?
Right.
And we hear about detoxing, but I think we misunderstand what detoxing is. When we look at detoxing, I want you to picture detoxing like collecting the garbage, right? So you putting all the stuff into a bag. Drainage is how you bring it out to the curb. That's getting it out of your body. So we have 7 main drainage pathways, we call them. These are exit doors. And every single person with bowel disease has compromised drainage pathways. If you've got IBS, Crohn's, or colitis, your exit doors are compromised. And this is going to involve things like your liver, right? We know like liver detox, right? But it's a drainage, it's an exit door. Gallbladders and bile ducts. You have your bowels, your kidneys, your skin, your lymphatic system, even your sinuses. Those are an exit door for things to get out of your body. When these are all congested, they're all plugged up from toxins or microbes like parasites and stuff like that. It's very hard for things to escape. So when you try to detox, you're bagging things up, but you can't get them out. So your body just sticks it in a different room. So you go to detox, I got a headache, or my joints hurt, my bowels are getting worse, because it's not actually getting out of your body because your exit doors are closed. Does that make sense?
That makes sense. Yeah. So it builds up, right? So
exactly. Yeah, it builds up and you mobilize it, but you never get rid of it. So it's like shaking your garbage can and spilling it over the floor and saying, my garbage can is empty, but the rest of your house got covered in trash.
Okay. Gotcha.
So those are our first steps, right? Change the inputs and drain. Because here's the thing, Richard, we get sick for 3 reasons, only 3. And in all of my medical experience, my training, working for doctors, consulting for physicians, I've really distilled it down to 3 things that make a human being sick, whether it's going to be weight gain or joint pain or skin problems or bowel disease. And these 3 things are going to be toxins, microbes, and deficiencies. Now, a toxin would be anything from a chemical, a pesticide, sugar, chronically high stress, chronically high blood sugar, emulsifiers, food preservatives and chemicals in food dyes. Like, these are all types of toxins, right? Pesticides and all that stuff. A deficiency can be exercise, sunlight, fresh air, diet, deficient vitamins, minerals, amino acids, like basic things your body needs to thrive. But microbes, these are what we call parasites, bacteria, fungi, and viruses. Any combination of these 3 things, a toxin, a microbe, or a deficiency, is what ultimately leads to illness. And when you can identify what your things are, what you're lacking in your body, what the infections are, what things are making you sick, and you can remove them, your body can then heal itself. And that's why we go through this drainage exit process, and then we can start to remove the problems. But this is how human beings get sick, and therefore how we also get healthy.
So do you do like a metabolic panel on people that's have IBD or Crohn's and colitis, or can they get one done and then they'd say, oh, look, I'm not clearing this substance. Maybe that's why I'm feeling sick.
It's a really good question. A metabolic panel can cover a lot of information. We're typically talking about blood work. So if I'm looking at blood, I do want to see your blood cells. So for example, about 25 or 30% of people who have elevated eosinophils. This is a type of white blood cell, eosinophils, so eosinophils. About 25 or 30% who have active parasite infections will have these elevated. That can be a leading indicator. You can also see there's something called functional blood chemistry where experts can dive into your blood work and look not just your reference ranges, but to dive into the detail and say, here's the thing that is optimal when this marker, your BUN, for example, your creatinine, your red blood cell count, your white blood cell count, when they look like this in this order, here's what it indicates. And it's not just ranges. You see, when you go to the doctor, Richard, and you get blood work done and you ask them for this reference rate, right? They say you're high or you're low. But if you're anywhere within this range, which is like the width of the Grand Canyon, they call you, quote, normal. But we know, looking at the data, 92% of North America is what's called metabolically unhealthy, which means everything about our blood work, our cellular health, not just weight gain, weight loss, but metabolism is anything in our body used to maintain life, any chemical reaction. So we are all metabolically unhealthy. And then what your doctors do is they take all this blood from your state or your city and they put it on a big chart. They modify for standard deviation and say, here's the average of ranges, highs and lows. As long as you're within that, you're, quote, normal. But if you're within the normal,
if something ranges like 1 to 100, is you're like a 1.1, you're fine. If you're 99.9, you're fine. You're like 1.0, you're not. It's stupid.
You're right, but already by definition, you're unhealthy. It's a huge difference. Like you're unhealthy by definition. You're so bang on because if you're normal and normal is sick, you're already sick. And it's funny, when I was really, really sick and things were all messed up, I went into my doctor and they had the reference range for testosterone. Mine was just at an all-time low. I was a strength athlete at the time, so I was using steroids, and then I got really sick, so my testosterone plummeted, and my testosterone was 9. Now, in Canada, the range they used at the time was 9 to 29. My normal at the time, without anabolic steroids, just me as a normal human being, was 31. So I was on the higher end of what's considered normal. After this, I was a 9. And my doctor said, yeah, it's normal, you're fine. But that reference range covered anybody from age 18 to 65. And I was like 22, 23. So I said, you're telling me as a 23-year-old athlete with a testosterone level that's the low end of a 65-year-old man that this is okay? But they do this. And then patients go into them and say, well, I'm sick, help me out. They say, well, we can't find anything wrong with you. Nothing's wrong. Well, there's no root cause. It just is what it is. And so all the metrics, the very foundation that our doctors are using to measure your health is based on wrong, inaccurate information. Therefore, they're going to draw wrong conclusions, which is nothing is wrong with you. You're totally fine. There's no root cause. Take a medication and be on your way.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. So have you developed a protocol to help people, or what has this evolved into over all this time, all your knowledge, conversations, etc.?
Yeah, everyone's going to be different. And I get this question a lot. It's like, is there a protocol? And I think this is where a lot of discrepancy comes in, because I say it's not this autoimmune genetic random condition. We have to look at you as an individual. So great example, I took a gentleman in, just saw him about a week ago. He came in to join the program and we were talking to him. We said, where did this come from? He was 34. He says, well, I was 32. I ended up getting sick, got the flu, and my bowels started bleeding, never got better since. And I said, hold on, let's call him Richard. And so I said, Richard, how often does somebody get the flu and bleed from the bowel that you know of? Never. I said, exactly. So what made your body so susceptible that the flu was the straw that broke the camel's back? Well, we went back in time. We asked him, said, were you breast or bottle, strictly bottle fed? So he's already missed this entire microbiome, a seeding of natural bacteria and colostrum, all the things you get from breast milk. Early on as a child, he was having ear infections and tonsil issues. Mom had asthma, brothers had skin issues. Turns out there was a mold problem in the home. Mold further disrupts your gut bacteria, that ecosystem we call your microbiome. It disrupts your mitochondria, the very energy producers of your cells, using them for detoxing, all kinds of stuff. It puts holes in your gut lining. It challenges your immune system and causes it to go haywire. So we have a poor seeding of gut bacteria, and then we have this mold infection, and then here he is in his early teens, he's having some health issues, not eating super well, starts getting acne. Well, when you don't have good bacteria, it's likely a fungal issue because they love low bacterial environments, and fungus like Candida can produce acne. So his doctor gives him Accutane, which shuts off. Remember, we talked about exit doors in the body. Skin is a drainage and an exit pathway. Shut that off so those toxins couldn't leave. So he had to circulate around his body even further. right? So this combination of things led to over all these years, and there was stress and school and this and that, and antibiotics. And eventually we said, okay, here's the story that got you to a place where getting the flu was the thing that caused you to bleed, but it wasn't the flu that caused the disease. And so we're looking at somebody, the protocol, there is generally what we call, I like to say the 5 R's, but really it's D5R. It just doesn't sound as nice rolling off the tongue. But the idea is we have to find your root so we can identify the problems, right? Then we can use drainage, open up the exit doors. Then we can go through the first R, remove the problem or problems. Is it parasites? Is it fungus? Is it mold? Whatever it is. And remember we talked about, it's going to sound like a lot, so if you want to pause this, slow it down, or take notes, we talked about 3 reasons you get sick: toxins, microbes, deficiencies. Well, this gentleman, we're going to call him Richard today, his toxins were mold, it was parasites, it was fungal overgrowth and dysbiosis. So we had to remove and fix that. And then we talk about deficiencies, right? Vitamins, minerals, amino acids. Well, this is the second R. Replenish what you're low on. Right? Then we have to go and rebuild the gut bacteria, repair the tissues, and rebalance the immune system. Now, it sounds very simple on paper. It's a pretty in-depth process. There's hundreds of questions and months and months of work to get it done properly and safely, but it can be done to the point where we've had people coming in with 17 years of ulcerative colitis severe. We actually did a great show called Know the Cause with Doug Kaufman. Flew down to Texas for this one. And this gentleman was 17 years with severe bowel disease, and they thought he was going to die, planned his funeral a couple of times. And 30, 40 pounds of weight loss, 15, 20 bowel movements a day, biologics, which are immunosuppressive drugs. They weren't working. Nobody could help him. And in 6 months, after 17 years, it took 6 months and he got his life back entirely, gained weight back, feeling amazing, went to Greece, was having pizza and wine, just lived his life because we found that root cause and applied this D5R process, and his body was able to heal.
Yeah, no, that's great. What was it that did it for you though? Like you said, you were all messed up. What were the steps that you went through to help yourself?
For me, it was the drainage. I had to open up my liver and bile ducts. My liver was compromised from physical parasites. Like there's these tubes inside of your liver. We call them bile ducts. It's almost like those tube-like water slides. And there were parasites physically blocking these tubes. I had fungus, candida, that was growing inside of my gut. It was up to my mouth. It was all over. It was on my skin, coming out as acne. I had to remove all these bacterial overgrowths and all these toxins out of my system. I had to change the inputs that were contributing to toxins. And then through the same D5R process, I had to open up my exit doors: liver, gallbladder, bile ducts, skin, lymphatics, bowels, all these things that were congesting my body, making me sick. So my toxins couldn't leave. And then I had to remove the problems. For me, again, it was parasites, fungus, etc. But my diet, I was eating a lot of sugar, a lot of refined foods. That was the thing that I had to begin removing. And then I had to give my body the tools it needed. That's the second R, replenish. I needed vitamins and minerals and amino acids. I needed supplementary support to help my gut bacteria grow back and help my gut heal and seal, or to soothe and cool. I had to rebuild that microbiome and repair the tissues, which are the next 2 R's. And then because, again, my immune system was all jacked up, I was using certain formulations of supplements, specific vitamins, we call photobiomodulation is a big fancy word, which basically means get out into the sun. I was doing grounding or earthing, which means touching your bare feet to the earth. And we can see, if you take a slide right now, Richard, I imagine you're indoors in front of a computer like I am, and all these radiation, Wi-Fi, these frequencies, they mess up your blood. Now, your blood, obviously, you need. If you don't have blood, you die. And your blood carries oxygen and nutrients and iron and all kinds of stuff around your body. But when you're sitting in all these EMFs and Wi-Fi, 5G frequencies, and you look at your blood under a microscope, all the blood is sort of stuck together. It's not coagulated like a scab, but it's aggregated like static cling, which means now you don't have enough surface area, right? If you have picture like grapes. You have all these grapes and they're all mushed together and mashed together. You couldn't cover them in as much, let's say, glitter, for example. If you dunk the grapes in glitter, you wouldn't get as much glitter to cover all the grapes. But as soon as you take those grapes and spread them out so they're individual, suddenly you have more surface area. And when you go earthing or grounding, touching your feet on the earth 10, 15 minutes a day, it actually takes those clumped together blood cells and it spreads them out. Now they can carry more oxygen and more benefits to the rest of your body. It's all these simple little things that we need in combination with the complex, your entire life history to how you got where you are, that we can then start applying, which are parcel of getting your body heal. But we just ultimately have to remove those toxins, microbes, deficiencies, and then replenish.
Yeah, I mean, this is the EMF exposure. So you need earthing every day in order to counteract that, at least for a period of time, to flush you out.
Yeah, I mean, that's the free version, right? Go outside, touch your feet in the grass. No one's going to charge you any money for that. There are options.
Well, what about a grounding mat while you sleep? So you get 8 hours of
Exactly. The indoor stuff. I have a PEMF mat on my desk. I'm touching it right now. right? Those little things can help and they make a world of difference. You mentioned a grounding mat for your bed, grounding sheets. You can get EMF protection. There's certain types of devices you can purchase that'll actually give you this type of protection to block EMFs. So there's all kinds of modern things we can use. But I think an important conversation we need to have, Richard, is that we have built a world around us that is no longer compatible with our biology, right? We're surrounded by EMFs and artificial chemicals and paints and petroleum-based products that humans 1,000 years ago were never exposed to, and which is why we have diseases humans never had before us. And so if our world is not compatible with our biology, we either get more close to nature to get more compatible, or we spend money on technology that bridges the gap to sort of dampen the damage of the world we've created.
Gotcha. So do you work with patients directly? Do you offer just information? Like what is, is the book really the place to go? Like how can people learn more?
There's a lot of places to get information. I do my best to make it to get out there as free as I can. We do work with clients individually. We do have custom programs we have. I got a kind of stuff though that's free. I think that's a great place to start. If you jump over to the YouTube, I'm like 500. If you jump over to YouTube, you can find my channel there. Just search Josh Dech. We have tons of information on Crohn's and colitis. I put out videos every single week. I've been doing them for years. I just started about a year ago. So there's over 50, 55 videos now, almost 60, I think, that you can go and just watch. Foods, diet, nutrition, root causes, finding yours, history, medications, pros, cons, all of it about bowel disease and how you can ultimately reverse it. And I appreciate you mentioning the ReversABLE podcast. That's really our big flagship show. But I created a secondary one just for bowel disease called Reversing Crohn's and Colitis Naturally. And you can listen to that also entirely for free. And through any of those metrics, if you want to reach out, of course, you can always send me an email, head to the website. All that information is directly connected across social media. And you can find all that through YouTube, podcasts, all that stuff. I'm on Instagram as joshdech.health, or send me an email, josh@gutsolution.ca. That's Josh, all singular, .ca for Canada, gutsolution.ca.
Well, very good. Well, Josh, thank you so much for coming on the podcast and offering help. Because I'm sure, I've had like stomach pains before and things like that, but yours is nothing compared to living with like constant, or your stomach's killing you and having to run in the bathroom and just malnutrition and everything. It just sounds awful. So thank God for what you do.
It's a pleasure to do what I do. And honestly, Richard, it's an honor, I would say, to do this, because you're right. Some people, their quality of life is so compromised. They're literally on their deathbeds. They have to leave their jobs. They get fired, can't hold relationships. And it really is a blessing to be in a position to be able to put this information out there and to make this information free. That's really my goal. I want people to have the tools to help themselves.
Well, very good, Josh. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Richard.
If you like this podcast, please click the link in the description to subscribe and review us on iTunes.
Thank you for listening to the Good Question Podcast. Please email support@thegoodquestionpodcast.com if you have any referrals to great guests for us to interview. Visit thegoodquestionpodcast.com to hear more interviews. And please help us spread the word by rating and reviewing us on Apple Podcasts, iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you listen to this podcast.